one more. Thank you both for that beautiful, wasn't it? Version, just breathtaking, brought tears to my eyes of Let It Be. If ever there was a song to help us calm down in the times that we're living in at the moment, that would be it. But you both together bring something to that just lifts it up and just uh, lands it in my heart. And I'm sure other people too. So I just want to say thank you. If we just had one, you could do that again, and then I would pray us out and we could all go home because I think it's that powerful. Well, I spent so much time getting ready to say a little something, something that I'm going to, with your permission and blessing, share what I came up with, if that's okay with everybody. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, as Kathy explained, so now I don't really have to. I call my talk "Beam Me Up, Scotty." So for those of you who know the how it goes, when somebody says "Beam me up, Scotty," the next line is, "Why are we beaming up? Because there's no." You guys don't know this. Okay, this is the lesson then. This is an opportunity to teach. I didn't realize that. Okay, great. Okay. You got it, Barbara? There's no intelligent life down here. So beam me up, Scotty. Does anybody else just feel like they landed on an alien planet, or am I the only one? Okay. So so is anybody else having a wee bit of trouble like I am with acceptance along about now? Which is kind of why we chose the acceptance, the power of acceptance, manifest, let's say the whole thing, manifesting the power of acceptance as a spiritual community for our November theme, because we anticipated that we just might be in a place like we didn't want to be, but we just might have be in a place like this. So back in November, November 3rd, Christopher Brown reminded us that when we fight reality, we kind of tend to lose. I don't think he mean I don't think he what he meant by that was don't fight to change reality and make it better. But I believe what he meant by that was acknowledging reality, acknowledging that reality is what it is, works better than denying it or poo-pooing it. Because in my humble opinion, caca really did pasa. And if anybody doesn't know this Spanish, that means poop happens. And if anybody wants an example of what happens when you can't or won't or are unwilling to accept reality, you don't have to look any farther than January 6th of 2021. So let's all take a breath. And last Sunday, Kathy discussed how important it is to own and feel our feelings, from disappointment to outright disgust and every shade in between. But then what? What happens after we feel those feelings? Well, this is where acceptance comes in, not just as a coping mechanism, which it certainly is, but as a spiritual principle. Because, in my humble opinion, acceptance leads us back to oneness. But if you're anything like me, you're attached or at least used to a world of dualism, white and black, Democrat and Republicans, good girls and bad guys, or is it good guys and bad girls, friends and enemies, us and them? And that's not just an idea. It's been the paradigm that the world has operated on since long before Jesus's time. Its roots go deep. And Jesus and many other spiritual leaders and avatars did their best to try to change the paradigm. He was killed for it. He was killed for saying things like, the Father and I are one. He was killed for saying things like, Greater things than I have done will you do. And love your enemies as yourself. These were radical teachings in his time, and they still are today. But oneness is an idea whose time has come, whose time has passed, come way past due, and yet we tenaciously cling to our dualism as if we would drown without it, as if it were a preserver on a choppy sea. But that right there, however right that feels, in my opinion, is an illusion. It's actually the oneness that's the life preserver on the choppy seas. And dare I say right now, or at least it feels to be, that we are adrift on a very choppy sea. We need that oneness to survive and to thrive. And we get there by acceptance, and it's not always easy, especially now when many of us, or maybe I'm the only one, but still reeling from an election that didn't exactly go our way. And some of us didn't see that coming. So we have and may still be having a hard time accepting the reality or the fact, let me say, fact of a Republican victory. But not just because who won, though there's certainly that, but because of what it says or what it implies or what we think it means or what we assume it means about the people of this country. But let's not throw the bathwater out with the baby. And here I'm using Mr. Trump as the baby and the people who surround and support him as the bathwater. It's just a metaphor, mind you. But if the diaper fits, in other words, let's not make assumptions, cast dispersions, or look down on folks who voted a different way, as tempting as that is to do. And in fact, some of the people that voted that way are now realizing that what they thought they were voting for isn't exactly what they were voting for, and are now having a little bit of voters' remorse. But that's not the only reason not to write them off. The metaphysical New Thought teaching that I struggle to fully embrace says, we are all one. It doesn't mean some of us are all one. It says all of us. Not only are we all one, we are all one in God, through God, and as God. There is no spot where God is not. And we are each emanations of the divine. Picture a gem with its many facets, shining and sparkling. We are the facets of that holy gem. As Karen Drucker sings, you are the face of God. Not just our friends, not just the people we like, not just ones we agree with or can get along with or don't bug us too terribly much. All of us. Breathe this in. It can be a hard teaching. And as a student of this philosophy, let's do our best to accept it. How do I do that? Well, as a 12-stepper, I've learned the value of the serenity prayer. It's my go-to when there's something or somebody or some situation that I don't like or that scares the crap out of me, and yet I have to deal with it. So I'm going to invite us to recite it together. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to change the things I can, of the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I'm not just a 12-stepper. So as an activist for peace and justice, I used to say, God, grant me the courage to change the things I cannot accept. Mm. Ah. Time and history will reveal whether things move forward or backward over the next 4 years. But we are very much a part of that history. And if we're not a part of the bathwater, maybe we're the bathtub itself, the container Or to borrow a lyric from one of my favorite musicals, Hamilton, the room where it happened, on our watch, so to speak. Hmm. Oh, so many of us did our best to make a different outcome happen, and we didn't get everything we wanted. So now what? We get to accept the current situation. That's our challenge, not forever, but at least for right now. Not so we can learn to love everything about it, but may we discover some silver linings that we can love. And may we be as conscious as possible about what aligns with our values and what needs to change. Because this is not about personalities, as hard as that may be to grapple with, because there are some very prominent personalities that want to make you think it's about their personality, but it's about values. And it's said that Democrats tend to value equality over security, and Republicans tend to value security over equality. And that's how more people voted for security over freedom. Why would they do that? What makes people do that? I believe it's fear. These are scary times, and we who value equality aren't always fearless either. But oneness teaches us that if there's fear anywhere, there's fear everywhere, even in us. David Hawkins, anybody familiar with the writer David Hawkins, scientist? He wrote a book called, he wrote tons of books, but one of them is called Power versus Force. That's the basic one. He did this whole thing of mapping of human consciousness from the lowest to the highest in a vibrational study. And he found that fear and hatred were at the very lowest vibration. And things like love and peace and joy are at the top of the vibrations. And as we know, we can't build a world where folks love and respect each other if we're coming from fear and hate in our hearts. Even if it's the so-called haters that we're hating on, it doesn't work that way. So we need to raise our vibration and keep it as high as we can. The Course in Miracles reminds us that everything is either love or a call for love. So that makes hate and fear and all of those emotions we consider negative, those are all calls for love, even though it's hard to be loving when we're gripped with them. It's hard to be loving when you fear that everything you have and depend on might be taken away by those scary others, those radical Democrats in the White House, those desperate immigrants streaming over the border, those funny dressed queer and trans folk who mess with our genders and come after our kids. It's hard to be loving when you've been fomented with lies for months or years on end. But we can accept the invitation that Michelle Obama gives us. When they go low, we go. She didn't say get high, but she said go high. We can accept these folks exactly as they are in this moment, warts and all, and we can even love them exactly as they are in this moment, warts and all. Why would we do that? Because love conquers fear and its extreme form, hate. We know this, we've been taught it over the years, and now we're being called to live it. Like Jesus, like Gandhi, like the Dalai Lama, like Nelson Mandela, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and even like Malcolm X by the end of his life. Jesus said, "Do good to those who despise you." And that's a challenge. That's a challenge. When he said, "Turn the other cheek," I don't think he meant moon them, as much as I kind of sort of hoped that he did. If we're to heal the rifts that divide our country, we have to get past the othering and get to oneness. That may take forgiveness. It probably will take forgiveness. But that's a spiritual practice that we've lifted up many time and get to do over and over again. Because it could take a long time and it could be hard, but a lot of hard things are well worth doing. And a lot of things that are well worth doing are hard. But we don't have a choice. Our future depends on it, and the future of our planet depends on it. The wholeness of our souls depend on it, and our hearts long for it at a deep level because we aren't separate. As the Bob Marley song says, one love, one heart. And I would add one life, one world, one humanity, one God, one, one. I listened to Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith of Agape International, listened to his talk that he gave on Sunday after the election, because I really needed something something more to inspire me. And he spoke of how the universe is always expanding, but there are smaller contractions within that expansion. Goes out, comes in a little bit. Goes out again, even bigger, comes in a little bit. And that's the back and forth rhythm of the universe. And he said the same thing is true of evolving consciousness. There are contractions within the overall expansion. And he used the metaphor of a slingshot. In order to release it forward, first you have to draw it back. And that creates the necessary tension so that when you let go and release, it shoots forward fast. And the same is true in archery. When you're doing that, you draw the bow back with the arrow so that there's the necessary tension so that when you release it, it shoots forward fast. So consider this a time of drawing back the bow of consciousness so it can shoot forward fast. Clarissa Piccola Estes said in 2016, "We were made for times like these." Mike Dooley, who I think of, anybody know Mike Dooley? He's somebody who has a lot of talks and videos and New Thought programs. And he lives in Orlando, Florida, and he has that Florida vibe. I call him the Jimmy Buffett of New Thought. He reminds us that we came here at this time for a reason. And in his recent post-election video, he says, "We chose to be alive at this time on the razor edge of reality creation." Razors are sharp. They sting. But Mike means the cutting edge of creation. And we know, as Reverend Mawata reminds us, our consciousness makes a difference. And that's because it creates. So what shall we create here together with all of our collective consciousness? Let's take that into prayer. Mother, Father, God, bless us as we return, accept, and embrace our oneness, where we know that we are called to raise our vibration to the highest level of inclusivity in that oneness. So even people that we might be tempted to leave out of the circle, we take a breath and open the circle to include them. Yes, they might have voted for a different candidate. They might be wearing a red hat instead of a blue one. They might be doing things that we find repugnant. But we know with a forgiving heart that they're coming from pain, they're coming from hurt, they're coming from fear, they're coming from perhaps traumas that we know not of. They didn't just wake up and decide to be like this. Who knows? And I like to say there, but for the grace of God go I. With dealing with the same situations and conditions, we might be that one too. So in that spirit of inclusivity and oneness, let us open our hearts as wide as we can. Let us raise our vibration as high as we can. We are called to step forward, to step higher than we've ever stepped, to be bigger than we've ever been in spirit. And we do that because of you, with you, and for you. And because we know we are you at a deep level, at the deepest level in our hearts, in the core, where we speak the language of peace and love and forgiveness. And this is a calling. Yes, it's a big responsibility. Yes, but it's also an honor and a blessing. So let us step into our big girl and boy shoes and pants, safety pins or not, and do this thing. If anything I have resonated makes sense for you, please join me in saying thank you. Amen. Ashe. And so it is.